1996, one name has been synonymous with wrestling figures: Jakks Pacific. The first figure I was introduced to was Bret the Hitman Hart in Superstar Series 1. There was 5 other superstars in this series, and they also featured bone-crunching action in the elbows and the knees. One of the great things about these figures is they were very durable, and they all seemed to have their own unique sculpts. They were made of rubber, and you could pretty much bend them in any way you wanted without fear of breaking them or scratching the paint. We got a slew of characters. As the floodgates seemed to open, it seemed like every time I'd go to the toy store there was a new figure on the shelf, all with its own unique sculpts, which was really cool. Even some mid-carders and jobbers even got their own unique sculpts. How cool is that? Another cool thing was the induction of managers, ringside crew, announcers, and even referees. Still to this day, we've never gotten such a huge variety of characters. You could almost run an entire production just with your figures. The figures seem to be doing really well, but I started noticing a trend after they started going on. At about Series 6, I started noticing a lot of characters were using the same body parts and a lot were being repaints. I think we got 10 Superstar Series, and that's when the line died off and we were introduced to a new technology, the Titantron Live. This new series was based around this playset, and it featured all new figures with all new sculpts, a new scale, and they were all made of plastic. They also featured a chip on the bottom of their foot that played their theme. Now, these figures, the faces were ugly. I mean, look at that Triple H. He looks like he washed his face in acid. And it happened with a lot of the figures. They were just downright ugly in the face. But, to their credit, they were still good figures overall. But the head sculpts just could not be overlooked. I mean, they looked like wrinkled old men, I mean, look at that. Luckily, we were saved by something called real scan technology. This took a wrestler's face, scanned it, and made a 3D model of it, which made wrestling figures way more realistic. It also gave us some of the best sets we'd ever seen, such as Rulers of the Ring and House of Pain. This time for collecting for me was one of the best times. We were also introduced to a super articulated line that was called Final Count or Finishing Moves. Now, while it was a little ahead of its time, the sculpts were terrible on the bodies, and the hair sculpts were awkward, so they didn't last very long. And then it was time to say goodbye to Titantron Live, as we were ready to go to a whole new series of figures, which would revolutionize the wrestling figure world forever. Maximum Sweat! No, I'm kidding, it wasn't Maximum Sweat. If you remember these were terrible, and if you have one, you probably should burn it or give it to someone you hate. What we were introduced to was R3 Tech. The 3 R's stood for Real Scale, Real Scan, and Real Reaction. We already knew what Real Scan was, but Real Scale meant the figures were in scale with one another, such as the smaller characters would be smaller, and the larger characters would be larger. And Real Reaction meant they worked with certain playsets. Now, while there was some really standout figures in this set, and the fact that a lot of them had unique sculpts, the playability was terrible, and the fact that they reused a lot of body parts right off the bat simply killed the line, and it seemed like it was gone as soon as it came out. Then we were introduced to our next series called Ruthless Aggression. From first glance, you could already tell that the figures were a lot larger and bulkier in scale. The muscles were very over-exaggerated, and they almost seemed cartoon-like. But the inclusion of a lot of B-name characters, I guess you could say, a lot of jobbers and newer characters, right off the bat really made this line pick up. And the fact that they were so simple and the playability was great, this line really picked up. We were even introduced to a new series called Deluxe Aggression, which was Ruthless Aggression with more articulation. The figures were great, but they really had one problem, and that was the fact that they were not in scale with Ruthless Aggression. And this really split the wrestling figure community in half on what they wanted to collect. But it wasn't until this series came out that wrestling figures really started booming. The Classic Superstars collection. The first series already had the Ultimate Warrior and Bret Hart. I mean, this figure line took off like crazy. There was the fact that you could put your newer wrestlers, your older wrestlers, and have them all in scale really made this line just take off. And it left us sitting around waiting to see who was going to get signed next. There was even a Toys R Us exclusive deluxe set that was really well done. But we found out that Mattel was getting the rights to WWE in 2010, which had a lot of collectors worried. All in all, Classic Superstars lasted 28 waves, not including 2-packs exclusives, and special editions, and Ruthless Aggression lasted 44 waves, not including 2-packs, special editions, limited editions, etc. That left us with hundreds of figures. Now, I know a lot of people are very skeptical about restarting their collections, but let me tell you, I've gotten my hands on some of the new Mattel stuff, and just take a look. Well, there you have it, a brief history of Jakks and a look at the new Mattel figures. Now, I gotta tell you, I haven't been this excited to collect wrestling figures in a long time. And I'm going to be reviewing all these figures, starting with this man, The Game, Triple H. So look out for that review, as well as reviews of other Mattel WWE figures coming up soon. Thanks for watching.
The Game!